Hello friends, and welcome back to another tutorial here on Simple Takeoffs. Today we're going to be going over how to download and set up the Boeing 787 Heavy Division mod for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. It's a free payware aircraft that you can't go wrong with in my personal opinion. And yeah, so there's three versions of it. There's the experimental, the development, and the stable version. For today's tutorial, we're going to be going over the experimental version, and I'm going to show you how to download it from their Discord, but you can totally use the other two as well. And without further ado, let's get a quick peek around this beautiful custom scenery for Gatwick Airport that I'll link in the description. And we got our 787 KLM here. Let's have a look at this Virgin Atlantic. Can we go inside? Oh, it's not modeled inside. Oh, cool. Look at this hangar. Nice. Anyways, enough messing about. Let's get into it, guys. Now, in order to download it, just go to your browser, go to Google, type Boeing 78 Heavy Division mod, 78X Heavy Division. And the first link that comes up, GitHub, I want you to click on that. And you can read a description of all the things that comes with it, like VNAV features and a bunch of extra goodies that enhances the experience from the default Asobo one. And on the right, click on the latest version and download the file and extract it. I use WinRAR, but however you usually extract things, to your community folder for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now that's going to get you the stable version, I believe. What I'm using in the sim is the experimental version that allows me to basically experiment with all the latest features that they're using, and that's going to be found in the Discord, as you can see here in the Heavy Division Discord that you can download. So if you want to opt for that, that's how you do it. Now this part is not mandatory at all. As you can see, I'm using Sim Toolkit Pro to do all my flight planning, and the main reason I use it is A, because it shows my route nice and neat here and with all the waypoints, and it has the load sheet up top. And another reason is because as a streamer, I use its feature to show all the data up top in my streams. But for you guys, you don't need to do this, but you can if you want. I find using the load sheet feature, clicking populate load sheet, it brings up a version of the window that can then be shown in the sim. You can't see it here, but if you open the sim, you will see it, and that helps with entering data into the FMS. Now I've jumped into the airplane, and on the overhead panel, I've given it some battery power, and I'm waiting for this guy to connect the cable for the external power, at which point we can go ahead and turn on the aft and forward external GPU. Now, as always for this, we're going to go by the DIFSRIP acronym that I covered in my Airbus A320nx MCDU tutorial. You can go back and review that if you're not familiar with this setup. But this is generally how airliners set up their FMS, and whether it's Boeing or Airbus, it's the same idea. And we're going to take this general approach for setting up the FMS in the Boeing 787. All right, let's get started. So for the data portion, we got the most active AirAC cycle, as I do have a Navigraph account. So we'll come to the heavy button here first and go to Payload Manager. This is where I want you to enter your payload from your sim brief, flight plan, as well as your fuel on board, the block fuel, including any extra you want, the total amount. And yeah, I'm entering it here. And once you do that, we're going to go ahead and click execute. And what that's going to do is it's going to load up the aircraft. It's going to basically transfer all these data in terms of the fuel and in terms of the payload to the actual aircraft. And it's going to appear on the navigation, or not the navigation, the EICAS up top. And the important part here is to make sure once all the load is entered on the right side where it's showing ACT actual values, you want to make sure your center of gravity does not shift. Sometimes it does. In my case, for this flight, the center of gravity is 19.9 or 1. Sometimes I find, on the left it says one thing, but once it actually ends up loading the aircraft, it gives you the actual, which is different. So we'll take note of that center of gravity, the actual center of gravity number, and we'll be using it soon. Now this next part, I'm chuckling because I can already imagine how this can turn disastrous, so I wanted to make sure I stress this. The fuel amount that we entered into the payload manager was for the FMS fuel prediction calculations. Do not forget to actually fuel up your aircraft. Do not forget, guys, because otherwise you're going to pull an XP72 and you don't want that. Okay, now that we're done loading up the airplane with the payload manager, we can come to this main launch page with this, which is basically if you go to init.ref and click index, it's a kind of like a shortcut to get to it. We're going to go to position initialization. We're going to enter our code for the airport Gatwick. Take that GPS coordinate that pops up, plop it into there at the bottom, click route. And now we can go to the init A page and start entering all this data, guys. So I'm going to enter Echo Golf Kilo Kilo for London Gatwick. That's where we are. Gonna have a look at my flight plan and see the runway I'm taking. 26 left. And we're going to Amsterdam, Echo Hotel Alpha Mike. Whoops. There we go. Flight number today, we're 2408. Click activate. Execute. Now we can go to route, page 2 of our route, and this is where we actually enter all the flight plan waypoints. So again, as I mentioned, I'm looking on the right, and you guys can't see it in this tutorial, but I've populated the load sheet from my Sim Toolkit Pro, and it appears in my sim, so I'm kind of looking at it to enter all these all these waypoints, but you guys can totally do it however you wish. You can scroll back and forth between your sim brief flight plan to do this any way you're comfortable. But essentially, you enter all the waypoints on the right side. If there's no airway from one airpoint to the next, it'll just show direct on the left, the via column. If there is an airway, that's where you enter it under the via column. So as you can see, I'm taking, Frayne and then Mike 604 to Gaspa, Mike 1907 to Redfa, etc., etc. So I'm going to go ahead and enter all these waypoints. And then if you click init.ref, departure arrival. Let's get that in first. After we enter all the the waypoints, we can go ahead and enter our SID and star for our departure and arrival route. So I'm taking the red one, the red Foxtrot 1 Alpha star, ILS 27 into Amsterdam. Click execute. There we go. Now we can go to the init.ref, which is basically the init.b portion of the diffsrip acronym. And if you're not sure where you are in the process, you can always click index under init.ref, click index, and go back to see where you are in the big picture of things. So now that I've completed my flight plan setup, I can go to init.b where I enter all my zero fuel weight, fuel reserves, and all that stuff. So let's do it. We got 358,000 pounds for our zero fuel weight, 7,000 pound reserves on the fuel today. And as you can see on the top left hand side, it shows our fuel quantity on board and our gross weight that we entered via the payload manager. Our cruise altitude is flight level 320, cost index 50. And this is where you enter the center of gravity. It's very important. So as you can see, the default value was wrong. I'm entering 1991 that I found in the payload manager. Next page, this is your performance page. So you can derate the engine for the outside temperature. So on the top left, it's actually 15 degrees outside, but I've entered 20. It's kind of similar to the Airbus. You basically lie to the engine, but a little different here in terms of the Boeing. You can also derate the actual takeoff and climb thrusts independent from the outside air temperature derate. So it's kind of like two ways to derate it, I think. One way is to tell the engine it's hotter outside than it actually is, and also you can, in addition to that, derate the takeoff and climb thrusts by 10 to 20% as you need. And then next page here, I've just went ahead and entered my flaps and I know I blew through that. You guys can go back, but I've entered my flap settings and my V1, V2, and rotation speeds, and that's it. Then that green marker comes up showing pre-flight complete. And now I'm just waiting for my IRSs to align, and I'll see you guys shortly. Alright, cool. Now that the inertial reference systems are aligned, you can see your map shows up on your navigational display. And as always, we can go through our flight plan and make sure everything is correct and to our liking in terms of all the waypoints being there and everything. So if you click Plan and Flight Plan in the FMS, you can click that step button, and that's how you can go through all the waypoints from, in my case, Gatwick all the way to Amsterdam. There you go. Here's a little zoomed out version of it to give you an idea of the bigger picture. So we're departing 26 left on the SID, making our way through to the northeast to Amsterdam. And you can clear that discontinuity if you're not on VATSIM, which is what I'm doing here. So what that's doing is basically taking the last point of my standard terminal arrival route and connecting it to my initial approach fix for my ILS approach. You don't do it like that technically. You go, depending on how your arrival is set up, you typically go from the last fix, radar. You receive radar vectors from ATC, and then you make your way over to intercept the ILS. But in my case, since I'm not on VATSIM for this flight, I'm just connecting it to make my life easier. Now, as this is a pretty straightforward departure, I did skip through the RadNav portion, but you guys can always check the radio navigation page to make sure all the correct frequencies are tuned in before you go to your initialization B for the fuel calculation and the performance. I kind of skipped over that because it's kind of a standard departure, but always do check that your course is set, and even for the arrival, this is the page where you enter the course for your ILS. It's a little different in the Boeing because the Airbus does it automatically. So yeah, that's everything for today's video. I hope you guys found it hopeful. I hope you can quickly be able to set up your Boeing 787, whether it's the experimental version or the development version or the stable, the heavy division mod, and I hope you can enjoy it. And yeah, as always, don't forget to click like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for a lot more, guys. Take care. Peace.